Welcome to the 5-Pack, where we talk about the 5 things that matter, 5 things that will matter, and a daily pack riff. Here is your host, Kyle Elfrink.
It is good, as always, to have you with us on a Thursday. Kyle Elfrink hanging out with you. It's a special day. I wore a button-up. How about that? It's the 5-Pack. Maybe that'll be number 1 of what matters today. Actually, that doesn't matter today. We are here to talk some sports, and it's great to have you alongside right here on the Better Sports Network. We get rolling each and every day at 12 o'clock Eastern. I want to thank our producer, Heather Klein. Yes, indeed, we will have a pack break today, and we will continue our week-long celebration. I guess it's a celebration of the NFL with OTAs going on this week. And we've got some NFL news for you coming up on the show. We have been ripping open packs from the early 90s, NFL style. What do we have? Yesterday, we had some Top Stadium Club. Yeah, pretty nice cards. Very glossy cards. I actually prefer what we had on Tuesday with year number 2 of Score Football. That was 1990. Today, we will have another card set from 1990, the Score set, which was in its second year of production. We have Pro Set, year number 2, 1990. And check this out. I don't know what it is, but it says we can get a NFL collectible in each pack. We can also get an NFL Pro Set playbook. Again, I will find out with you, what is this NFL set playbook? Also, if we were really on top of things, we could get a very cool Pro Set shirt. Like, how badass is that? You imagine wearing this around? You might be able to find this at, Goodwill, Salvation Army. You might be able to find one of those Pro Set shirts. Who knows? They're probably worth money nowadays. So we will delve into year number 2 of Pro Set. I will tell you this. Our producer, Heather Klein, was doing some investigation. This set is full of errors. Like there's dozens upon dozens. We will see if we can pull in. Most of the error cards have no value, but there's a couple of very awkward error cards. It's almost like Pro Set created a football set that was legitimate, like you could buy it at the store, but they also stuck in like inside joke cards, like from guys who worked at Pro Set. Like there are literally cards that feature employees of Pro Set. I kid you not. We'll tell you more about that coming up in the show. But as always, we start you off with 5 things that matter right at this very moment. Also 5 things that will matter as we go through the sporting day. Let us get rolling with things that we're thinking about on a Thursday morning, and we got to be thinking about the playoffs, whether it's basketball or hockey. They have been keeping us busy here on the 5-Pack for the last couple of months. Hockey, though, is closing in on a bit of a break. Like tonight, we have a chance for the Vegas Knights to eliminate Dallas. That would be a 4-game sweep. We'll talk about that coming up later. We already have a 4-game sweep out east. It is courtesy of the Florida Panthers, who got a very, very late win against Carolina last night.
Comes back out. Now Reinhardt with it. Down to 10 seconds. Maybe that may have hit the post. Coming back out in front with it is Trout, who scores! In around the net. He feels like there was a poke in there on the goaltender Anderson.
Yeah, right there. The initial play before Tkachuk lets the puck go. Now, is he aided in by Pesci?
Now, if that happens with 5 minutes to go in the first period, instead of 5 seconds to go in the third period, you think that little stick nudge is legal? You got guts if you're the zebra there saying, we looked at replay and the goal is disallowed. You know, you thought you saw a lot of junk on the ice at Dallas 2 nights ago. You would have seen a lot of junk on the ice down in Florida. Goal counted. How about Matthew Tkachuk? A 4-game sweep by the Panthers, and he had the game-winning goal in 3 of them. Game 1, Game 2, and Game 4, like you saw last night, courtesy of ESPN. Sergei Bobrovsky has been great all series, really has been great throughout the playoffs. Was pretty good last night. He made enough of the saves. Carolina played well. Like, you think about it, last night, within the first 90 seconds of that Game 4 on the road in Florida, Carolina was down 1-0. And then with about 85 seconds into the game, they lost their top blue liner, Jacob Slavin. So they played well. They came back. They were down 2-0. Like, Carolina put up a fight despite being down 3-0 in the series, but it wasn't enough. The big goal with 5 seconds to go. Now, one of the great things about like game winners, and that wasn't OT, it kind of came late in regulation, which you don't sit there very often in a tie game in the playoffs. And when the clock is ticking under 10 seconds, it's not like you're anticipating a goal. What you're anticipating is like OT. You're anticipating the Zamboni coming out and cleaning up the ice. But it's kind of fun to watch the reaction shots. Like we just saw Tkachuk score the goal. Let's take a look at some of the reaction shots from this night. That's a fun one. Probably my favorite. I love when Tkachuk comes over to the bench. Remember, there were still 5 seconds left in the game. You couldn't leap onto the ice and pile on with your teammates, but you still got to see the reaction from the Panthers. How about the stands? Let's go to the stands last night in Sunrise, Florida. For the Panthers organization, it will be their second Stanley Cup Finals. I'm guessing a lot of you think, when the hell were the Panthers? 1996, when they were up against a bulldozer, the Colorado Avalanche. Avalanche were loaded that year. Patrick Waugh, Joe Sakic, all that good stuff. So they just wiped out the Panthers in 96. Long road back. Not only over 25 years later are they finally back in the Stanley Cup Finals, but check out the road that the Panthers have taken to get here. They top, according to points, the best team ever in the regular season, according to points, Boston. They then took out Toronto, and now they've taken out Carolina. Those 3 teams, Bruins, Maple Leafs, Panthers, were 3 of the top 4 teams in the NHL regular season. So I think it's safe to say the Panthers have earned their way. Now, if you look at current odds to win the Stanley Cup, Florida is your number 2 pick. Vegas is still the favorite, but Florida at this very moment, plus 110 to win the Cup. Now, here's the other part here. We've got that Game 4 tonight. If Vegas wins, they will sweep the Stars, and we will know it's Knights against the Panthers. Today is May 25th. With the way the NHL schedule is written right now, the Stanley Cup Finals would not be starting until next Saturday, June 3rd. Now, that's not locked in, but that's what the NHL wants. Because if they shift from that date, then the whole TV schedule gets blown up, and, ABC and ESPN, they got to switch their schedule. So they don't want to do this. But think about it. If the Knights win tonight, are you really going to make these 2 teams take 8, 9, 10 days off between the conference finals and the Stanley Cup Finals? We'll see. That's a tough decision. I don't know where I would side. I know the teams would say, man, let's play next Tuesday. But you got to understand, you've got ESPN and ABC paying millions upon millions upon millions. Like, the way they make money is the Stanley Cup. And for months now, They have been planning their entire programming schedule, including conflicts with the NBA Finals. Remember that, because ESPN, ABC carries those. So it's not as easy as saying, hey, nobody's planning for June 3rd. Let's just move the Stanley Cup Finals to next Tuesday, next Wednesday. Like, that makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. So we'll see. I would guarantee you the NHL home offices right now are hoping that Vegas loses tonight, and therefore they got to play again, say, what would it be, Saturday night in Las Vegas. Then it makes a little more sense. You'd still like to not have 6 days off. But for the Panthers, I mean, they're going to have a long time off regardless. Even if the NHL shifts the Stanley Cup Finals schedule around, the Panthers have been red hot, playing great hockey. We talk about Bobrovsky. When a goalie is locked in, you don't want him to take a break. And now they're stuck with a break. So we'll see how it's handled by the NHL. Again, a lot is dictated by tonight and what the Stars and the Knights do. We will get to that in just a moment. Let's move to item number 2 of what matters today. It is not often that we sit here when talking about Major League Baseball and say, wow, remember that win in the 3rd week of May on a Wednesday night? That was a huge win because, again, baseball, it's one of 162. We always think of September victories as the important ones. We might look back, though, at last night's occurrences at Yankee Stadium and say, you know what? That was a big win for the Baltimore Orioles. Let me set the stage. Top of the 7th inning, Baltimore is down 5-1 against the New York Yankees. The night before, they lost in extra innings to the Yankees. Then they got into the ballpark yesterday, and they had to sit around for like an hour and 45 minutes waiting out a rain delay. Eventually, the game got going on Wednesday night, and eventually the Yankees were up 5-1, 7th inning. Yankees bullpen's been pretty good this year. This game is over. Aha! Not so fast, Yankee fans.
And Adam hits a fly ball to the right, deep into the corner, by the pole. That ball is off the pole. Ding dong, the Orioles are right back in it. Adam Frazier's power surge continues with a 3-run left-on-left homer. And this is a 5-4 game just like that. Henderson smacks it fair, past the dive of Rizzo, into the right field corner. McCann scores, Mateo burning behind him, and he will score easily. And the Orioles have resurrected this game. A 5-run 7th inning, a pinch hit 2-run double for Henderson, and a 6-5 Baltimore lead.
And it would end up being a 9-6 Baltimore win. They ended up scoring 8 times in that 7th inning. And right now, the Orioles, 32-17. They are only 3 games back of Tampa. Now, the whole discussion in baseball, and even certainly in the American League East, has been, wow, look at Tampa. Tampa's playing awesome. Like, that's been the whole story. Baltimore 3 games back. And hey, Baltimore's got issues. Like, do you fear anybody in their rotation? Hell no. Bullpen's better, but in terms of rotation, you don't fear anybody. I mean, like today, Kyle Gibson's pitching. I mean, is Kyle Gibson their ace? He might be. I don't know. But he's pitching. Like, they don't have the pitching, but they do have the hitting. And I'll tell you another thing. Gunnar Henderson, that pinch hit 2-run double, that put the Orioles up in the 7th inning. That is a young, remember, going back to the start of the season, he was the Rookie of the Year favorite in the American League. He's had a bad start, really bad start. But he's starting to turn the corner just a bit. Pinch hit, 2-run double last night, huge hit for him. He has got a hit, I should say, in 9 of his last 11. In that run, he's hitting over 300. He has 6 extra base hits. By far his best run of this season. I will note he still has a ton of swing and miss in his game. In this 11-game run, and again, he's having a measure of success. He still has 14 strikeouts against 1 walk in the 11 games. So still trying to figure some things out there with Gunnar Henderson. But Baltimore, I mentioned the record, 32-17. They're 3 games back. They are now 3 ahead of the Yankees. They can move beyond the Yankees by 4 games with another victory tonight. 7:05, Kyle Gibson going up against Clark Schmidt. Worth noting, New York on the money line is favored at -135. But that was a big win. I mean, the Orioles were pretty well dead. Like Nestor Cortez was rocking and rolling, and then he gives up that dink off the foul pole to Adam Frazier. Video courtesy of Masson out of the Baltimore area. Big thanks to them. Big win for the Baltimore Orioles. Let's go to item number 3 on what does matter. Yesterday afternoon in Philadelphia, it appeared that the Phillies were going to get swept by the visiting Arizona Diamondbacks. But a guy who had a great March, didn't do anything in April, hasn't really done anything in May. He had a moment yesterday, bottom of the 9th with 2 outs, and Trey Turner at the dish.
And the pitch in the air to left field. Going back on it is Carroll. Back toward the wall. It is gone! The Phillies have just tied this game up. Trey Turner, a 2-run home run. Towering shot. It's a 5-5 game.
And they go on for a 6-5 10th inning victory. Trey Turner, okay, superstar. Trey Turner ain't been a superstar with the Phillies. This is surprising. Even with yesterday, 48 games in a Phillies uniform, and the dude's hitting 250. 48 games with the Phillies. He has got 13 RBIs. He's got 5 home runs. His OPS is 690. Now, I'm not here to say, oh, Trey Turner, what biggest letdown of the season, he's finished. No, not at all. Guy's been a stud for 5 years. He gets more than 2 months, okay? But what's crazy, and I want everybody to hear this out, if you rewind the clock back to the end of March, I recall hearing this many times. We always hear spring training. Oh, it doesn't matter. Don't fall in love with spring training. But if you follow these things, everybody who tells you, usually guys sitting behind a microphone, guys sitting in my seat, in one breath, they will tell you, don't pay attention to spring training. In the very next breath, they were saying, oh my God, Trey Turner in the World Baseball Classic. Oh my God, Trey Turner, look how locked in. Trey Turner is due massive things. Like, that was said everywhere. Just a reminder, what did Trey Turner do in the World Baseball Classic? He played 6 games. He hit 5 home runs. He had 11 ribbies. His OPS was like 1,500. He was hitting 390. Like, he had an awesome 6 games. And people got on that. Wow, Trey Turner, this guy's going to be awesome for the Phillies. 6 games in the WBC, 5 home runs, 13 RBIs. 48 games with the Phillies, 5 home runs and 13 RBIs. I'm not picking on Trey Turner. I'm picking on the people who tell you March means nothing, and then they tell you March means something. Don't fall for it. I'm telling you. Here's the big thing with Turner. Here's the big thing. Stolen bases, they're up everywhere, right? Everybody's stealing bases. You know who isn't? Trey Turner. Trey Turner, who I think everybody had listed best bet to lead baseball in stolen bases with all these new rules and all these changes. Trey Turner was the guy. He was the odds-on favorite. DraftKings, whatever book you go to, he was the odds-on guy. Lead baseball and so he's got 6. Here's a crazy thing. Trey Turner has 2 stolen bases in his last 28 games. Yuck. Terrible. Huge win. Not as big as Baltimore's, but a big win for Philadelphia because they are falling behind. Even with that win yesterday, Philadelphia is 23-27. Remember, last year they repped the NL in the World Series. 23-27. They are currently 7 back of the Atlanta Braves. And that number is important, 7 back, because tonight they open up a 4-game set in Atlanta. So I don't want to say it's do or die time for Philadelphia, but if you lose, 3 of 4, and all of a sudden you've gotten to the end of May and you're like 7 games under 500, and you're 10 games back of Atlanta, sure, there's the wild card. I mean, all Phillies fans know that from last season. But you're hurting. You're hurting if you're 10 out come June 1st. So we'll see. Important game tonight, all weekend long for Philadelphia. Tonight, good news is that they have Aaron Nola going up against Dylan Dodd. Both sides minus 110 on that money line. Let's go to our 4th item that matters today. We will stay in baseball, but we're going to shift gears from the East Coast. Let's go out to the West Coast. Last night, The LA Angels got another big win. They actually pull off a sweep of the Boston Red Sox. Don't look now, but the Angels are playing some good baseball. And you guessed it, their big guns were the big guns on Wednesday night.
Obviously, as a sinker ball pitcher, you're not really happy when you got an umpire going to call the high one.
High fly off the bat of Shohei. Back near the wall, Duran. It's gone. Shohei to the opposite field. Oppo tacos for everyone. Last night, the Angels hit a couple out to the opposite field. Tonight, 2 more. And it's Ohtani with his 12.
And a launch angle, 30 degree. You mentioned earlier, Wayne, how well he stays in.
Rippers up here.
Yeah.
There it goes. Left center field off the bat of Trout. Duran is back at the wall. He leaps. Goodbye. Home run, Mike Trout. He passes DiMaggio on the all-time home run list. And the Angels are up 7-1.
Always fun. We see Trout and Ohtani homered in the same game. Doing it again. Trout left center, right center. Last.
Bally Sports with the footage there. Mike Trout, by the way, with that home run, bypassing Joe DiMaggio for all-time home runs. Trout is now 85th on the all-time list. That was home run number 362 for him. I don't know about you, but I watched that highlight, especially on the Trout home run, and it kind of hit me. It is so rare to see a home run traveling, and when you look beyond the wall, like way beyond the wall, it's not a bunch of condos or high-rises. It's like natural beauty. And I know people in Orange County would say, you think that's beautiful? You should look the other direction, out to the ocean. But I'm watching that highlight there, and it's like the ball's going up and the camera's panning, and there's no buildings in the way. Like I can see 30 miles off into the foothills of Southern California. You don't see that anymore. You usually got stands out there. You have downtown. Anaheim, old school, kicking it old school with those highlights there. 7-3 victory for the Angels. Obviously, Trout and Ohtani both hitting home runs. This year, the Halos are 4-0 when both guys hit home runs. And for their careers, they're 18-8 when both Ohtani and Trout hit a home run in the same game. So that's something to keep track of. I will point this out with Mike Trout. And again, we're needling Mike Trout. He's hitting like 275 this year. And we are now at the point where Mike Trout, like you go back 5-6 years ago, Mike Trout's like a 320, 330 hitter. Lately, there have been injuries, and there have been a big dip in batting average. Trout is becoming more of like a sub 290 hitter, which he is great. He is an all-star. When you list the best hitters in baseball, Mike Trout's name is going to be the first 3 or 4 you mention. But that 330 kind of season that he used to put up, 3, 4, 5 straight years in a row, ain't happening now. And he'll probably get back to 290 by the time it's all said and done. But the average has really slipped. Still a great ball player, home runs, ribbies, runs scored, all that stuff. He's playing every day, which is huge. Angels looking good. They have won 6 of 7. They are 28-23. If the playoffs started today, the Angels would be your 7th and final team into the postseason. Right? I think that's right. Yeah, 7th and final team into the postseason. They got a lot of fighting to do, but they're looking pretty good. They are plus 180 today to get into the playoffs to play in October. So you can still get pretty good odds if you're feeling the Angels. Now, we've been here before. But we've also been in a spot with LA where you get to May and they're like, oh my God, what the hell's going wrong? This team seems a little bit better, a little more built for the long haul. We'll see if they can maintain pace in the AL West and in the American League. Final thing really has nothing to do with a win, nothing to do with a loss, nothing to do with like a great stat. Well, I guess it is a great stat. We've already given you our East Coast bias. We've given you our West Coast bias. Now here on the 5-pack, let me give you my Midwest bias. Let me give you my bias about velocity. We all love velocity, right? Like velocity's everywhere. Yesterday up in Minneapolis, it's the 9th inning of a 7-1 Twins lead. They're playing the Giants. It's a Wednesday afternoon. It's a getaway day, for the Giants. You're not really thinking about, whatever, we'll get this game done, go out, have a couple of beers after the game, head home, grill, whatever. But hopefully you stuck around in the 9th inning, whether you were at the game or you were viewing the game, because Jhoan Duran was in, and far be it from me to say it's must watch television when a guy's throwing hard, but just check out. We're going to show you, and this is courtesy of Bally Sports out of Minneapolis. But we're going to show you, I believe it's the final at bat or one of the final at bats in the 9th inning. These are all back-to-back pitches, and I want you to pay attention to one thing. Just follow the box at home plate, the strike box, and follow the number that pops up on every Jhoan Duran pitch on this next set of highlights.
Well, we've now.
People will throw accurately is incredible.
104 up and.
I wrote that down because what we saw there was 103, 104, 105, 106. Or no, 105 is where we top. Then back to 104, then 103, then 104. What? Are you kidding me? Crazy with Jhoan Duran. Here are the final stats. 1046. That was the pitch that hit 105. That 1046 is the fastest pitch in Major League Baseball this season. He also hit 104 in that at bat. That is the second fastest pitch of the season. Jhoan Duran of the Twins is the 8th pitcher since 2008 to hit 104. Why 2008? That's when they started to get accurate readings with the radar gun, the StatCast stuff. So he's the 8th guy to get to 104. I will note Aroldis Chapman has gotten to 104. Guess how many times Aroldis Chapman has gotten to 104? 67 times. It's a big, big number. The other guy who can kind of get to 104 fairly regularly is Jordan Hicks of the St. Louis Cardinals. And those three guys, Hicks, Chapman, and then Duran with the Twins, those three guys are the only three pitchers to ever hit 104 more than once in the same game. So, you just sit there and you say, my God, where does this end? 104.6. And I guess somebody will get to 105 too, and maybe we'll hear a 105.6. I don't know. It's like, what can the human body withstand? Duran, by the way, has been a stud thus far in his major league career. It's not just, he throws hard. Here are his numbers. 86 major league innings. Jhoan Duran has a 1.78 ERA, a .97 whip. He is striking out 11.8 guys per 9 innings. His walks are not out of control. Little shaky this year, but overall the walks aren't terrible. And he's got 15 saves. Now, he has not been given the 9th inning job in Minnesota. They still mess around with a couple of other guys there from time to time. But he's probably the leader in the clubhouse, you will, for saves. He's been awesome. 86 innings, couple of seasons now. This is year number 2. He throws hard. I don't know if 4 years from now we're seeing Jhoan Duran throwing hard. You almost expect some sort of arm injury. But right now, all is good for Jhoan Duran. 104.6. And you should hunt down that run through on Twitter where you can just watch that over and over again. It just loops and you can see. Good stuff. Okay, take a break here. When we come back, 5 things that will matter for tonight. We'll hit you with those items next on BSN.
It is amazing the attention that Kyrie Irving draws on Instagram when I think he went Insta Live yesterday. And Kyrie had a lot of great messaging about Ja Morant and everything that we're going through in our country right now and about taking care and nurturing one another. Now, that's all positive. The negative aspect of it is, don't believe what he's going to do in free agency, the conversation that he hasn't made a decision as of yet. Don't necessarily believe any of the pundits out there or analysts out there about what he is going to decide to do. Here's the problem. If I'm looking at this scenario, I mean, the idea that Kyrie Irving is all of a sudden this finishing piece, the only time he's ever been a finishing piece is when he played for LeBron James, or with LeBron James, I should say, and the Cleveland Cavaliers, and they won an NBA championship. He was a disaster in Boston, disaster in Brooklyn. The Dallas Mavericks acquired him this year to be the running mate with Luka Doncic, and they went out and missed the playoffs. Now Dallas still wants to go out there and pay him. But who exactly right now is clamoring for Kyrie Irving? By the way, the speculation is going to run rampant when you sit courtside for a couple of Laker playoff games out there in Los Angeles, because We all know that was your place of destination, the place you wanted to get traded to when you left the Brooklyn Nets. So would it work if he was a teammate of LeBron James? Absolutely. Because LeBron James is all about basketball and trying to win, and LeBron's not going to retire. He wants to play basketball next year. And he would obviously, Kyrie Irving in Los Angeles with the Lakers would be a perfect fit. Anywhere else, it'd be similar like it was in Boston, Brooklyn, and Dallas. Kyrie Irving has shown you little to no leadership qualities in running a basketball team. He's an unbelievable talent. Unfortunately, sometimes that talent is not realized on the NBA court. For more content like this, check out the comments below for a special offer from our friends at Fantasy Alarm.
Welcome back to the 5-Pack. Next up, the 5 things that will matter. Here's Kyle Elfrink.
Take care of some house cleaning before we get to those 5 things that will matter. I want to remind you again to go to fantasyalarm.com/underdog right now if you want to get a free match on your first deposit with Underdog Fantasy. You can do so with Fantasy Alarm and Underdog Fantasy. Again, go to fantasyalarm.com/underdog and use the promo code Fantasy Alarm, all one word. That will get you up to $100 in matching funds with your first deposit. And speaking of Fantasy Alarm, if you go over there, Britt Flynn has some best ball draft strategies. I know we've got a new baseball prospects write-up that you can find at Fantasy Alarm. Our friends Howard Bender, Adam Ronis, they have the Cash It podcast. New update there, so do check it all out at fantasyalarm.com. It is there. As for us here on BSN, coming up later today at 3 o'clock, we will have the Fantasy Football Game Show with the guys from Front Yard Fantasy coming your way at 3 p.m. Until then, we've got 5 things that will matter still to come. We will do our Pack Rip 1990 NFL Pro Set coming your way. Let us start, though, with counting things up from 1 through 5. Things that will matter to you, the sports fan. And we start in Boston. We start with a perhaps unexpected Game 5. I think 2 nights ago, everybody kind of thought, Miami's going to sweep Boston. No troubles. Heat are going to roll. Who's slowing down the Heat? Celtics have quit. They've already got their golf outings booked. Not so fast. Boston had a very good third quarter the other night in Miami. Tonight, they will have Game 5 in Boston. Currently, Miami is up 3-1. I will say Jimmy Butler, who's kind of become the star of this NBA postseason along with Nikola Jokic, Jimmy Butler is still as cool as a cucumber. Here he is the other night on talking after the loss in Game 4 and talking about getting set for Game 5.
Consistent. Do the same thing that I do, that we do after every game. We're going to listen to some music. We're going to drink some beers back there. I'm going to go have some wine. I don't think that you could just focus on basketball all the time. You have to be able to, get away from the game a little bit. Think about it. But at the end of the day, you fall back on, your habits, how consistent you're going to be. And myself and my teammates, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to smile. We're going to be in this thing together like we always are. And we're going to go get one on the road.
I love it. Music, beer, and wine. It's like we're going to a wedding rehearsal is what we've got for Jimmy Butler tonight. Gotta love it. Tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern, 8:30 Eastern on TNT. Now, what's interesting, and this was the case yesterday, it's the case today, Boston's a heavy favorite, favored by 8. And I know so much attention is on Jason Tatum. And it's kind of like the opinions of Jason Tatum kind of go up or down depending on the day. How did you play or what happened to the Celtics in the last game? Well, if you lost, well, then Jason Tatum's a failure. If you win, oh my God, Jason Tatum's a hero. So it's kind of disturbing, like constantly, how people, their opinion of Jason Tatum is dictated by the previous night's result. I had to look it up today because I feel that the storyline is when the Celtics lose, well, it's Jason Tatum's fault. But when the Celtics win, Jason Tatum's a hero. I looked this up. In 9 wins this postseason, Tatum has 252 points in 9 wins. In the 7 losses, he has 215. Like he's scoring the same amount. Now, I know shooting and all that stuff, but, we want points, right? We want to score points. Tatum's doing fine. Win or lose. Now, Boston's had major issues at home. Here are the latest numbers. This year, straight up at home in the playoffs, they are 4-5. In their last 19 home playoff games, they are 8-11. Now, again, despite all that, they're a heavy favorite tonight. 8 points is what the Celtics have in their back pocket. Couple of injury notes here. Gabe Vincent, who did have a big game. What was that, game 3 for Miami? Gabe Vincent is not playing tonight in game 5. He is out with an ankle injury, so he is unavailable. Also, it was reported yesterday, Malcolm Brogdon of the Celtics, a starter for this team. He's been dealing with a bit of an arm injury. He's going to play tonight, but he is also less than 100%. So again, 8 o'clock, 8:30 tonight, TNT with the coverage. Speaking of 8 o'clock, that moves us to our second item that will matter. Hockey. Mentioned it earlier, the Las Vegas Knights, if they win tonight, they will punch their ticket to the Stanley Cup Finals. They are currently up 3-0. They are taking on the Dallas Stars tonight. This is an 8 o'clock start, and you can catch it on ESPN. Got the news yesterday that Jamie Benn was hit with a 2-game suspension. Now, we expected this. I talked about it on the 5-pack on Wednesday. I thought maybe at least 1 game. The NHL ended up giving Jamie Benn a 2-game sit-down. Here's his response when he was asked, hey, what were you thinking when you took your stick and you fell on top of the Golden Knights' Mark Stone's?
Didn't want to take a 5-minute penalty, but the game happens fast. Emotions are high, and obviously would have liked to not fall on him, and I guess use my stick as a landing point.
I don't think we call that an apology, do we? And I get it. It's the playoffs, and thankfully Stone is not injured. And Jamie Benn knows he screwed up. He's the captain. He totally screwed the pooch here. That came early in Tuesday night's game. He was out, 5-minute penalty. The Knights go on to score. They're up 3-0 at the end of 1. Dallas fans are ticked off. I mean, Jamie Benn knows he screwed up. He's not playing tonight. I will note Dallas is a favorite tonight, -125. Key for the Golden Knights, if you haven't been following much of this series, is Aiden Hill in net. He is 6-1 in the last 7 playoff games, so he is playing great. Offensively, Jonathan Marchessault has been fine in the back of the net. He's got 5 goals in his last 4 games. And Jack Eichel, his first ever playoff run. Jack Eichel, formerly of the Sabres, now with the Knights, has looked great. He has kind of been the straw that stirs, or the stick that, what is it? The straw that stirs the drink. That's what they say. That's been Jack Eichel, no doubt, for the Knights. Again, ESPN tonight, 8 o'clock. We'll see if the Golden Knights close off the Dallas Stars, and then we'll find out if the NHL is going to adjust the Stanley Cup Finals schedule. For item number 3 on What Will Matter, we go to baseball, and we talk about a game that is taking place later this afternoon. We're about 3.5 hours away from the Washington Nationals and the San Diego Padres. Why in the world am I telling you about these two teams? I'm telling you about these two teams because don't look now, but if the Nationals win today, the Washington Nationals, if they win today, they will have the same exact record as the San Diego Padres, the team they are playing today. Now, if you know anything about baseball, San Diego, automatic playoff team. Me, Kyle Elfrink, I sit here and I took the Padres to win the NL West. And I still think there's a slight chance. They got too much talent to be. But if they lose today to the Nationals, they will be 22-28. And if the Nationals get the win, they will be 22-28. I mean, we have mocked the A's this week. We have mocked the Royals this week. We haven't gotten around to Detroit yet, but we'll get to them at some point. We've been mocking these teams. Washington was supposed to be like the third stooge in MLB this year. It was, Oakland's going to be pitiful. Kansas City's going to be bad. And oh my God, there were people who said Washington would be worse than Oakland. But right now, again, if they win today, they're 22-28. Now, they're not going to win anything. They're not going to October. There's none of that. But this is what you want to see. You're a rebuilding team. Like, even these guys playing for the Nationals outside of like a a Josiah Gray, a Mackenzie Gore, a CJ Abrams. Most of these guys currently playing for the Nationals are probably not with this team when they're back, say, 3 years from now contending. They aren't. I mean, look, their best hitter right now is Lane Thomas. Lane Thomas, what's his OPS plus? He's 126. Hitting 290, 7 homers, 25 ribbies, 31 runs. Good stuff. Great stuff. He's their best hitter. But he's not going to be here when the Nationals are good. You know, these are just guys to get us to that point. Now on the pitching side, Gray and Gore, those guys have pitched well this year. Great sign for the development and improvement there with the Nationals. But this is as good as you could ever hope if you're a Nationals fan or if you're in that front office. And today, 4:05, you got Blake Snell against Jake Irvin. And they could have the same record as the Padres. Now, I found this crazy. If you go over to DraftKings, the Padres are still minus 125 to make the postseason. Even with this start, minus 125. If you're wondering about the Nationals, who've got almost the same exact record as the Friars, right now, at least at DraftKings, and pretty well everywhere, I looked at a couple of other spots too, you can't even get odds on the Nationals to make octave. They're off the board. So all starts are not created equal. You know, you got two teams with almost the same exact record, and you still have San Diego as a favorite to get to the postseason, and Washington's off the board. Crazy how that works. Today, Blake Snell, Jake Irvin, Padres minus 190 for the win. But I was looking at the standings like, wow, the Nationals can tie the Padres. 22-28, the record this season. Okay, let's move to item number 4. We mentioned NFL OTAs. Nothing really happens in OTAs, but you do get to have press conferences. You do get to talk to the players, talk to the coaches, and on occasion, news will come out. Bit of news in Baltimore. Lamar Jackson, he signed, sealed, and delivered. He's at OTA, so that's good. Obviously, they are learning a new offense in Baltimore. If you haven't been following the situation, Kubiak is out, and now you have Todd Monken as your new offensive coordinator in Baltimore. And Lamar Jackson, meeting with the media yesterday, they got into talking about, okay, with a new offense, new coordinator, kind of learning things in OTAs, might we see a little less running from Lamar Jackson? Here's what he said yesterday.
Only take you so far, you know, and I feel like with this new era of teams and offenses in the league, I feel like we need that. And Coach Todd Monken, what I'm seeing his offense so far is looking tremendous.
Do you feel like you won't have to run as much, and that'll maybe be scaled back a little bit?
Absolutely, absolutely, especially with the receivers we have, Bade, OBJ, Zay, Duve, Pro, all those guys. You got Isaiah, the tight end. I can't say Zay. Isaiah, the tight end. Mark, my guy. It's looking real good.
Lamar, is there something in this offense that you feel like will allow you to showcase an area of your game, maybe that we've seen before, but showcase it more than just, the running ability?
Less running and more throwing, I say. I hear a lot of noise about throwing and stuff like this, yards to achieve and stuff, but I'm not really worried about the yards as much. It's about us just winning. So that'll be all the winning category, if anything.
Less running, more throwing. Okay, now this is what I'll say. If you're a Ravens fan, or if you're Ravens ownership who just gave that guy $200 million, that's what you want. If you're a fantasy football player, dynasty league, keeper league thing, that's not what you want. and this is, I'll say two things. A, this is what every running quarterback eventually has to understand. It can work when you're 23. It doesn't work when you're 28. And Lamar Jackson has been phenomenal. Lamar Jackson's been otherworldly as a runner. But we've seen it mentioned in Buffalo with Josh Allen. You see it with Lamar Jackson. 2 years from now, you're going to see it with Jalen Hurts. These teams know you can't live that way. Maybe when you're young, you can survive the bumps and the bruises, but eventually they add up. The hits pile up. So what the Ravens are doing makes sense. Total sense. It's what they should do. The other problem you've got is, I will note that this is being said in May. We hear this. I always remember the Panthers would come out in May and say, we're going to pull back on Christian McCaffrey. We don't want to give him 30-plus touches. He can't. And I always said, talk to me in September, October, and November when the games matter, when you're trying to win. And I'll say the same thing here with Jackson. But if the Ravens and Jackson kind of do make this switch, it's a big hit in fantasy football. There is still a jury out on whether Lamar Jackson's a good passer. There just is. We don't know. They've given him weapons. They've tried to develop them, but mainly he's been slightly improved, and then he just stalled. He's been the same guy for 3-4 years. So we'll see if this improves. It could. But in fantasy, you want a guy running and running. And again, Lamar Jackson's not going to go to 2 carries a week. But right now for his career, he's over 10 carries a week. The Ravens would want that number more like 7. That's where they'd like it. I was looking up rushing totals for the season this upcoming year. Lamar Jackson is got an over-under of 875.5. Juice is to the under, and it should be. It's minus 140 on the under. I would go the under. I don't like those odds, but I would take the under for Lamar Jackson. I will note, 875. What's that? Well, he has topped that number twice. The 2 years he stayed healthy was well beyond 875. But he's been injured the last 2 years. In 3 of his 5 NFL seasons, he hasn't even gotten to 775. So that 875 is a massive number, especially with the idea that they're going to scale back the rushing. So, Jackson's still going to be probably one of the first 5 or 6 QBs off the fantasy draft board. But I would kind of recommend everybody scale back on the rushing expectations and understand you're going into a season where you hope the passing can pick up for the pullback and running. We shall see. Fifth and final moment, fifth and final piece of news that does and will matter. San Francisco will stay with the OTA storyline, and we'll go to the 49ers camp where we're talking about QBs because they got too many. Can you ever have enough pitching? Probably not. Can you ever have too many quarterbacks? The San Francisco 49ers are going to put that answer to a test because right now they've got Trey Lance, they got Sam Darnold, they even have the Allen guy from Cincinnati as a 4th quarterback, and of course they have Brock Purdy. Now, we got news yesterday that San Francisco plans to have Brock Purdy throwing the football as soon as next week. Remember, he just underwent elbow surgery 2 months ago, I think, maybe even less than 2 months ago. Here's Purdy talking about the recovery from the operation.
Feel good. Arm is feeling good. So to say I'm going to be ready by this time or this time, I just, we're not trying to label any kind of timeline like that. For sure, though, that's a goal, right? To you want to be ready for the season, and if that's the case, great. But like I said, we're just taking it one day at a time, and don't want to say anything that we regret down the road or whatever. So
Purdy had the out of nowhere rookie season, got the 49ers into the NFC Conference Championship game, got hurt in that game. That's where the elbow got injured. So a lot riding on what he can give the 49ers. But again, they do have other options. Sam Darnold brought in for some reason. Trey Lance is still there. Speaking of Lance, Kyle Shanahan, who kind of seen as the QB maestro. I mean, think about this. They don't necessarily know who their QB is. And I looked at the odds today. San Francisco is minus 150 to win the NFC West. San Francisco's win total for this year is 10.5. This is without knowing who their QB is. So almost Vegas is looking at this and saying, who cares? Kyle Shanahan will figure it out. With Trey Lance, this is kind of a final opportunity for him to win the job and keep the job in San Francisco. We're going to run into contract issues in just a bit. Here's Shanahan talking about where Lance has started and needs to continue to improve.
Playing with your feet wider apart, always be in a position to throw. When you're a quarterback, your feet aren't together. When you turn into a runner, your feet are together and you look to run, but then it takes you a second and a half to throw where defenders can tee off on and things like that. And it's about always having to be in a certain position to throw in. So when the O-line is bad, you're not one of those guys who's just going to get sacked every time the O-line's bad. You know how to get rid of the ball, or you know how to turn into a runner and go. And that has to do with how you balance your feet out, how far you keep them apart, and how you can progress in a pocket.
For more on this, I want to send you over to fantasyalarm.com. John and Pimba, I think he wrote this maybe a couple of days ago. You can find it on the site. Talking about Trey Lance as a great best ball pick, and I would totally agree with John. I don't even need, in best ball, you don't even need to know if Trey Lance is starting in week 1. You don't. Right now, his ADP is like in the 170s in a best ball setup. That's a QB3. If Trey Lance, let's say he makes a dozen starts, he could very easily be a top 6 QB with just a dozen starts. Like, he's got that mobility. He's got that offense around him. So check out that column at Fantasy Alarm. By the way, Lance is going, and John mentions it in the write-up, he's like 24 picks before Brock Purdy. And I think a lot of people say, yeah, Purdy probably wins that. Even if Purdy wins it, he doesn't bring the skill set or the fantasy-friendly game that you get with somebody like Trey Lance. One other thing to keep in mind with best ball, and again, that's every week you get the best totals. You don't have to pick starting lineups, none of that. But with best ball, you can very easily, with the way the ADPs are handed out, you can very easily tag team Trey Lance with Deebo Samuel, tag team him with George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. I mean, Trey Lance right now is going like 100 picks later than those guys. So it's a really easy combo. And combos, you love them in best ball. The QB receiver, QB running back, QB tight end, you love those combos. That's a really easy one to get to. Trey Lance and any of those other 49er options. Again, check out John and Pimba's column, fantasyalarm.com, talking about the huge upside that you get with Trey Lance in a best ball setup. We will take our final break here. When we come back on the 5-pack, it is time to open up 1990 Pro Set. We'll do that next on BSN.
All right, the 2023-2024 NFL season is quickly approaching, and I want to discuss some veteran quarterbacks and their new teams. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers tops the list. Aaron Rodgers signed with the New York Jets. New York Jets are Super Bowl contenders because of Rodgers in some people's eyes. I wouldn't go that far. Baker Mayfield takes over in Tampa. Nothing to see here. Derek Carr should improve the New Orleans Saints, making them a contender in the NFC South. But don't sleep on Jimmy Garoppolo arriving in Las Vegas to join the Raiders. You see, Josh McDaniels and that staff basically found and developed Jimmy Garoppolo. That offense is very intricate and hard to learn. It's probably why Carr struggled in it last year. Now, last year, the Raiders lost 11 games. 9 of those losses were by 1 score or less. I think Garoppolo changes that this year. Not only do I look for Vegas to be the second best team in the AFC West, I think they go over their win total, and I think they're a playoff team in the AFC, all because of the addition of a quarterback that knows that system in Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm curious your thoughts on how you think this year's class of veteran quarterbacks who change teams will fare. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. While you're down there, check out a special offer from our friends at Fantasy Alarm.
Time now for the Daily Pack Rip on the 5-pack with Kyle Elfrink.
Yes, Pro Set is what we're yanking open here in just a bit. Before we get to that, I mentioned DraftKings a couple of times. Should note as well, go to fantasyalarm.com/DraftKings. Right now, you bet $5, they're going to give you instantly $150 in bonus bets. So check that out, fantasyalarm.com/DraftKings. Okay, let's open up our Pro Set pack. I mentioned errors. I mentioned kind of silliness. I think Heather Klein pulled one of these silly cards. There's a card, which you can find in packs, I guess. Flash it up here, Heather. This is, quote unquote, Steve Young. Remember, this is 1990. But as you can tell, that's not Steve Young. Pro Set prospect. I don't know who the hell that is. What is it? The president, the VP of Pro Set? At least when he was a kid playing football. And I think on the back of the card, you can see a photo of him. This was actually like in the set. I don't know why, but it was there. A lot of errors in this set. It's not the most attractive set, but we'll make it through. It's kind of a fun set. We'll probably find a good card or two. Here's a fun. This is, and I do remember this Pro Set. And I think it was maybe only this year. They had, I don't want to call these inserts, but they were kind of a subset within the set, where they would give you a special Super Bowl card, and it would feature the Super Bowl program. This is for Super Bowl 14, the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, Steelers 31, Rams 19, January of 1980. But every Super Bowl at the time of the production of this set up to 1990 was repped here, which, hey, as a kid, I love this stuff. I've talked a lot on the show. Back in the day, they gave you a history of the sport. You know, you can read up on Super Bowl 19. Not a particularly interesting Super Bowl, but you can read up on it. Nowadays, we don't get the history. So the goal, bring back the history. ProSet did it back in 1990. Okay, it's not Richard Dent, because we've been getting Richard Dent all week, but we do get John Roper, linebacker for the Bears. We are still in the era of oversized pads, and those shoulder pads are massive. Scott Studwell. You have to be a stud if your last name is Studwell, right? He wasn't much of a stud, although he had a long NFL career. This was his 13th NFL season, and he led the Vikings in tackles. He had 172. Scott Studwell, he might still be at the top of the Vikings all-time tackles list. Not a guy, I know Viking fans know Scott Studwell. Many of us do not. Pro Bowl card, Kevin Ross. Check it out, Honolulu. Yeah, they play Honolulu Pro Bowls. People still didn't care about the Pro Bowl in 1990, but they did make special cards. Here is Mike Koffer, I believe. Kofer, place kicker for the Niners. They were very good back then. Kofer with a lot of kicks. Stephon Page, who was one of the leading receivers for Kansas City in the late 80s, early 90s. Chiefs weren't very good in that area. They were still waiting on Joe Montana to show up. I shouldn't say they weren't very good. They were a team that would constantly win 8 or 9 games, get into the playoffs, and then lose. So they weren't bad, but they were just kind of mediocre. I like this card. This guy looks like an old-fashioned 1970s card. Troy Benson. Got good color there. Looks like he's just tackled Marion Butts. The old Charger running back, Marion Butts, getting tackled there. We go next to the ugly uniforms of the Atlanta Falcons. John Steele. This is right when Dion was showing up. Falcons got Dion. They had to change the uniform. They brought in Jerry Glanville. They went black and white. The other thing is the Falcons used to play at the Braves' old stadium, Fulton County, and that was a dump of a football stadium. And you'd have the old carve out of grass and dirt, just kind of those irritating things. We are back to our giant shoulder pads. Linebacker John Grimsley. Like, seriously, bigger than a house, John Grimsley. Man, the linebackers. Houston Oilers before the move to Tennessee. Stanley Morgan, very good wide receiver for the New England Patriots. Bob Greasy, check this out. Hall of Fame, Bob Greasy made it in 1990. Of course, he was the quarterback of the Dolphins when they went undefeated. There he is making a pass. Bob Greasy spent a lot of time in the booth. And again, I love the history. You get a write-up. You know, even kids in 1990, they didn't know who Bob Greasy was, but you got the whole write-up. And we were talking about the 49ers earlier in that QB room. I believe that Bob's son, Brian, who played for the Broncos and other teams, Brian Greasy is now in that. I think he's the QB coach for San Francisco. So there we go, connecting the 5 things that will matter to our pack rip with Bob Greasy. Clarence Verdon of the Indianapolis Colts, decent player, but never had the big-time season. Here's a guy who had big seasons, LT. The one and only LT. And kudos to ProSet. They did the exact thing you should. Let's show Lawrence Taylor getting a sack. And man, Lawrence Taylor, check him out. Just a bad dude. Let's look at those sack numbers. 11.5, 13.5, 20.5, 12, 15.5, 15. Man was a monster. Absolute monster. Earl Farrell of the Phoenix Cardinals. And wow, check this out. If you weren't getting sacked by Lawrence Taylor back in the day, Reggie White back in the day, good pack. 90%. We'll do it again tomorrow. The 5-pack, 12 Eastern on BSN.